welcome to the Smart Publishing Impact Series. I'm Renée Lautermilch, Chief Editor at Smart Publishing, and this is the podcast where we explore all things writing, publishing, and the impact of storytelling. In each episode, I'll share insights and strategies to help you navigate the book journey, whether you're writing, publishing, or already an author. Plus, you'll hear from inspiring authors who are using their book to change lives. And if you're passionate about storytelling and ready to make an impact, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Smart Publishing Impact Series. I am Renée Lautermilch, your host and Chief Editor at Smart Publishing. Today's episode is episode 39, Structuring Your Chapters to Optimize Reader Engagement. So we're going to go through a lot of different strategies for nonfiction. So this is the nonfiction genre, and typically not memoir, autobiography, or biography. So this is usually, genres like business, self-help, anything where you're instructing or teaching something, reference, sharing information, that sort of stuff. So really important to kick it off by clarifying, that this is definitely not for fiction. Some of this could be translated to fiction, though, for sure, and some of it can be translated to memoir. You just don't use as many as the techniques that I'm going to discuss in this episode and those sorts of genres, because they're story driven, and stories naturally are a lot more engaging than instructional or fact driven information. So first, I just want to, I don't know, I'm just like kind of sitting here admiring the bookshelf these days. I think these are pretty much every single one of these bear maybe like my book is a release from this year or will be a release early next year. We've released 12 bestsellers this year. We've released 12 books this year, all bestsellers, I should say that. And we got 4 more coming up, which of course are all going to be bestsellers because that's what we do here at Smart Publishing. It's just been exciting to see people get such important work out. I think about everything that's been released and everything that's being released, and it's just an honor to be able to help people get their content out in the world, their stories out in the world, and then just the ripple impact that happens. Like I'm looking back here, and I'm looking at fostering potential in people, for example. That was a recent release. I think it's still lingering bestseller. I mean, it's been bestseller for at least a couple of weeks now. And that book is really the first book that hits into how not to train people on your team, but how to truly develop them professionally, personally, help them, grow. And it's a book collaboration with a bunch of just heavy hitter leaders on it. And I know that there's quite a few copies out there now, and hopefully what that is translating into is the quality of leadership getting better, because when the quality of leadership gets better, people's lives get better. So much of your quality of life is linked to the culture and work environment that you find yourself in, which is, where a lot of us spend a lot of time. And so if it's a toxic work environment, we probably don't have, we're probably not having a great experience. Our nervous system is probably in fight or flight mode quite a bit. And all that stuff trickles downstream. So, and that's just one book. And then I look at The Tsunami Effect by Eric Mitchell, that is helping high performers to identify the warning signs of just an emotional crash coming that, a lot of us high performers, we don't think about until it's too late. His book is so insightful and it's so helpful. And every single person who is a high performer, somebody who places a lot of pressure on themselves, typically type A kind of folks, people who have high pressure jobs and roles in life. Every single person should read it. It's really important material about how does anxiety get created, and how does anxiety end up, going down and triggering into long-term and lasting depression and things like that. Um, Gosh, this could be the whole episode, me just sitting here bragging on our authors, but I'll mention one more that's an upcoming one here. We've got the Detox Dwelling over here by Kathy Males, and that actually changed a lot of what I do in my own house. And so uh that is like the best resource guide that I've ever read, from a woman who is just a cleaning expert. She's an expert on natural and environmentally friendly cleaning methods, which if something's environmentally friendly, fortunately, it also translates into being healthier for your home too. But there's so many things that I didn't know, like even about plastic off gassing of your shower curtain, and how that those chemicals essentially get in the air and you breathe them in. And so now we've got a fabric shower curtain in our one shower that doesn't have like the glass doors. I make all our cleaning products from scratch now, from specific ingredients. And the funny thing is, many of them actually clean better than the super chemically store-bought ones. And it's cheaper to do it, it's healthier to do it. I don't feel gross when I'm like getting them on my hands and thinking like, oh my gosh, what is like absorbing into my body right now, because it's made out of stuff like white vinegar and witch hazel, and a few drops of lemon essential oil to make it smell nice. It's natural stuff. So anyways, that's going to be coming out next month, November 18th. So mark your calendars. I literally have her book just like dog-eared with a whole bunch of pages where I go back and I'm like, oh, how do I make this recipe for this cleaning, all-purpose cleaning solution again? Oh, cool, here it is. Okay. And then I'm like, a little scientist with my mixing in my little bottle. So anyways, that is all I'll say about that. We're getting to the end of the year now, so I'm sitting here and feeling a little bit reflective and kind of in awe of how fast this year went. It's October 29th right now, and so in just a few days here, on Saturday we'll be in November, and it's just mind numbing. My kid's about to turn 3. That's wild. She was like a baby 2 seconds ago. So, don't blink. Enjoy the people that you're with. Look at the incredible things that you have the opportunity to do every single day that you have to do it, and just living from a place of gratitude is just the way to go. Um, so let's get into today's content. Now that my nostalgia reflection is done. Once again, we are getting into how to structure your chapters to optimize reader engagement. And that's so important because you go through all this trouble to write a book. You want people to read the whole thing. You don't want them to start reading, zone out, and be like, yeah, this is going to be one that I'm not going to finish. You want your book to be one that they finish. And so there is a way to structure your content, um, in a method that gets people moving through it. So I'll go through technique by technique. By no means is this exhaustive of everything that you can do to break up your content and make it more engaging for your reader, but certainly there's going to be a lot of techniques here. So you don't want to just outline your book, you want to outline your chapters as well. And you want each of your chapters to have a very similar structure to them so that when your reader comes to each chapter, they know what to expect and it's not a disjointed experience where some chapters start with a story, other chapters don't start with a story. You need something that's consistent because that is going to allow them to focus their brain power on the content that they're reading instead of trying to reorient themselves to what is happening and what the structure of each chapter is. So that's really really important. I bring a lot of adult learning science into what I do because that's a big part of my background as a master's in instructional design and somebody who's spent her and her entire career in learning and development. And so sometimes I will throw some learning and development techniques in there because they work, and it's science based, it's research based, it's cognitive, it's brain based, and so these are things that are techniques that we typically use in designing education, whether it's a course or it's a guidebook or a job aid. You can take the same approach to books as well because it helps people move through it, helps people learn and retain what they're learning. um, so let's talk about we'll kind of start at a high level and then we'll go more nitty gritty. So one of the first things that I do pretty much with everything, and this is even with like fiction and memoir and everything, you divide your chapter into sections with section headers. So this is really important, um, because especially if some of your chapters are on the longer end, it can be intimidating for a reader to move through that. And a lot of us like to, continue doing something until we've finished it. And it can be very difficult if you have to put a bookmark in something with no real separation between what you had just read and what you're reading. There's no feeling of conclusion that way. And so, if any of you have ever read a book with just a monster chapter and you're like, oh my gosh, how many pages are left in this thing? 10 pages. I don't have time for that. There is this this thing that happens, where you become very demoralized. And when your book is written that way, people are actually less likely to finish it because of that demoralizing feeling. People like feeling like they can get quick wins. Quick wins feel like feelings of accomplishment. I finished something, I accomplished something. And so when you break your chapter up in sections, not only do you help people absorb the information better because you are essentially chunking the information into a categorical or a category based format, but you are also allowing them to stick a pin in it, per se, or stick a bookmark in it, very easily with still a feeling of accomplishment. I completed this section, so that they can easily come back to it. And they're not picking up in the middle of a section where they're like, wait, what was going on? It's a natural transition within that chapter. So it makes sense to cut that off with a section header. And so an example is, let's just say I open with a story. Okay, and then after the story, I start to go into the lessons from that story. Well, I'm going to break that off from the story with a section header. So it's really clear that the story is done and now we're getting into the lesson material. And I may even, if I have 3 lessons from the story, I will probably section header each one of those so that it's chunked very easily. And we learn better in chunks. We understand information better in chunks and by categories. You can think about your ability to learn as if you have a shelving system and you're putting things on those shelves, right? And so um, when we break things up with sections, we are essentially providing that shelving for the reader, and then we are putting the information in each section like the things on the shelf, and so that helps the reader organize it mentally much better. So section headers, definitely a must. Another popular thing to do is what is called a pull quote. So a pull quote or a PQ and if anybody's ever seen me working on their stuff and I've got it highlighted as like PQ, that stands for pull quote. And that's where you're pulling, I like to call it mic drops. So like when an author has a line where you're just like, oh man, that's like that's strong. Like that's a really important point that the author just made there. It's like this standout, like key principle or key point of that section that if they don't remember anything else, if they remember that, then they're getting they're getting the real meat of what we're trying to convey to readers here. So what you do is you just kind of format that differently. So if you've ever read a book and it has this little quote in the midst of the text that sort of is a really great summary of that section that you're reading, but it's formatted differently. It's bigger, it's maybe in italics, sometimes it's in a different font, it looks fancy, whatever. That is a pull quote. So that is another really, really great way to break up information in your chapter. You just have to make sure that where you're doing pull quotes, that those are mic drop quotes. And then you have to make sure that you're doing them consistently. Don't have like 2 in one chapter and then 0 in another and then 5 in another. You need some sort of consistent format for how you're doing that. So I'm editing Eliza Lake, I'm editing her book right now, and we're doing pull quotes, and we're doing pull quotes for every single section. So that is very consistent throughout. And if I go back and I'm reviewing everything and I notice like, uh-oh, this section doesn't have a pull quote, I'm finding a pull quote. So you just have to make sure that you have a consistent approach to that. And something else you have to have a consistent approach to is call out boxes. So call out boxes are really they're just that. Like you can design them in so many different ways. They can be you can have a lot of visual creativity with how you do it, and it can fit like the visual interior design theme of your book. And so I've seen people do, call out boxes like a post-it note before. I've seen others do it like a ripped off piece of notebook paper. Sometimes they're just a little bit more clean and straightforward where it's just a little gray box. But you can use call out boxes for a lot of things. I have another book, Zach Siegel, with Small Biz Heroes, and we're doing call out boxes. But we're doing call out boxes under a range of different items. And so there's a range of different call outs that we make within each chapter. So one of those is a bottom line call out. So if there's a really information heavy section, we'll put a bottom line call out box to just be like, bottom line, like all this other stuff aside, here's what you really need to remember about this topic. We're also doing a mindset shift one at the end of each chapter where it's like, okay, this is really, as a business owner, how you have to change your thinking if you're going to be successful with small business lending. Funding your organization is what his specialty is. So you just need to make sure that you have a consistent approach to design. You need to make sure that you have a consistent approach to the subject matter that you put in the call out box. These are typically very short, they're not lengthy. You can have caution, like a caution call out box. You can have, I just did one in somebody else's the other day, Jeremy Doran. We're doing a book, really, really, really cool topic of his about understanding how people think and understanding how people process to better communicate. But we have a definition call out box that we're doing. So there's so many different things that you can do with call out boxes. So we've talked about section headers, we've talked about pull quotes, we've talked about call out boxes. Those are the most popular when you're sort of reading through the text. Another really popular one is how are you going to end the chapter? Key takeaways, key insights, lessons learned, some way for you to just sort of summarize the most important things from that chapter for the reader. That's a really, really great summary way for you to end. If you have something that is more of a self-help, you're looking for the reader to make more of a transformation, either in how they think, or even how they do things. Sometimes you might have either a workbook or a reflection question section at the end of each chapter with some writing space, so they can even just write there and do the workbook or the reflections directly in the chapter. So that is also another really, really great way to engage your reader. Pull them in with the questions, pull them in with the workbook activities, make them an active participant, instead of just a bystander of the information. Make them an active participant in the information, and then you engage them that much more. QR codes as well. So just because it's a book doesn't mean that the person needs to stay there the whole time, especially if you have anything that is like resources that you want to draw people to, where you can't share it in a book. So maybe you want people to see a video of something. I have somebody else who's going to be doing guided meditations, but these are things that you cannot do in a written format, right? And so you're placing QR codes throughout, so that as they're reading, they can just scan the QR code, bam, now there's the video, or bam, there's now the guided meditation that is now creating a sort of multimedia experience for this person. Now it's kind of expanding beyond a book. And then, especially for those of you who are trying to get leads and clients out of your book, call to actions into a CTA page to download a free resource. They're entering their name, their email, their phone number, and now you've got their data, so you can continue communicating with them. That is another thing that you can do to accent and break up your chapter, and have people have just a fuller experience with you and your subject matter, versus just what's on the page. Actually, we've got Sabrina, her book over here, The Perfect Storm. She has a QR code that starts each chapter off, that leads you to a different song that was a really inspirational song at that part of her life, because her book is memoir, that really helped her get through that part of her life. And so you get to sort of go not just on this reading journey with her, but this like musical emotional experience throughout that reading journey, which just adds so much more to it. So many different things that you can do here. And then I've not even talked about graphs, charts, tables, visuals, all these different things that can start to break up just words on a page into visual things that are structured. Tables are great for structuring and organizing information to help people better, understand it through consolidation and simplification. Um, One of my favorite books, I've mentioned this on a previous podcast, and this is as a learning and development practitioner, is Designed for How People Learn by Julie Dirksen, where she draws like stick figures and stuff throughout the entire book to visually illustrate the points that she's trying to get across. And this is a woman who, like me, she's an adult learning expert, and she understands the brain science of learning. And so it's really effective, and it's really, really engaging, and it's an awesome book. And I don't know too many people who have picked up that book and not gone cover to cover on it, because it just pulls you right through. So those that's where I'm going to stop, because I could keep going and going and going. But I will say this: pick a few things, don't pick all the things. If you have so much going on, where you've got call out boxes and pull quotes and section headers and QR codes and stick figures and tables and charts, and it may end up becoming a distraction from your subject matter. What you need to really decide is what is going to accent your subject matter. So your subject matter, what you're writing about, that should still be the core, it should still be the focus, and you should choose the structure that best helps to um, really optimize that content and not distract from it. Because if you're just picking sort of engagement techniques just to pick engagement techniques, and you're forcing them a little bit, that's where it'll become a distraction, and you're waving around all these shiny objects in front of what you're trying to get people to look at, but there's so many shiny objects that people can't tune in to what's actually important. So I would say, you know, 2 to 3, 4 of these techniques tops. And just make sure that it works in the flow of what it is that you're doing. If you ever feel like you're forcing something, then it's probably not the right call. And if you have questions and you want to bounce ideas off of me, or you want to even send me, you know, some pages of your manuscript and ask what I think, I am always encouraging people to reach out to me. I am mostly on Facebook. You can search me, Renée Lautermilch, Lautermilch. As my husband says, CH in German makes a K, so that's why it's Lautermilch, not Lautermitch. Please don't call us that. I am the only one in the world, the only Renée Lautermilch in the world. So when you search me, I'm the only one who will come up. Drop in my DMs. I love it when people hit me up and ask me questions. I live to help and I live to teach. And then, you know, go back in the episodes of this podcast and, you know, check out some previous episodes. I try to teach and share as much information as I can on this podcast. And if you haven't subscribed already, definitely hit that subscribe button. If you have 60 seconds, I would be so honored if you would take the time to rate and review. It helps get this podcast out in front of more listeners. And then, of course, you can always find me and other helpful resources like our blog, for example. We've got courses as well on writing and publishing on smartpublishingservices.com. And then Renee at smartpublishingservices.com is my email address. So you can always reach out to me there too, if that's what's easiest for you. So just to summarize again, you know, primarily this is for nonfiction, but it can work for fiction. Like section headers are actually a really great way to go. Or, you know, sometimes you even have like those little visual section separators when in fiction you're going from one scene to another scene. That's something that works really well. But primarily for nonfiction, we were talking about all the different ways that you can structure your chapter to optimize reader engagement, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how great your content is if nobody moves through the content, nobody reads it, nobody remembers it, you know, because it's just this big overwhelming block of text and it's not broken up in a way that keeps the reader moving through and really absorbing and learning what it is that you're sharing with them. So, like I like to say every single time, keep writing your story because the world needs your voice. Until next time, take care now.